All right, good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Welcome to Uncanny X Chronicles, the unofficial X-Men 97 podcast. I am your host, Brandon Choi, co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited, and thank you for joining us each of these said weeks that we do this said show, breaking down the episodes of X-Men 97. This go around doing season 2, episode 6. And as always, I will have a special guest joining us for each episode, and we have a special one on tap for you guys. So, without further ado, I'm going to get into a brief recap of what went down in the episode, and then I will bring on our guests. So, give me one moment, and we will dive into the episode itself. So, as I said, this is for episode 6 of season 2, and picks us up after the aftermath of what you can see here that I have here in our background with Apocalypse taking out, spoiler alert, Magneto, and we have Xavier who is reliving, that traumatic moment at the hands of Magneto's death at the hands of Apocalypse. He's in the danger room, therapeutically, working through, that moment that he experienced, and also using it as an opportunity to determine strategies to be able to potentially defeat Apocalypse in their next encounter, should the X-Men encounter him again. However, within this moment, we're getting hints of the danger room that we've, come to know and love as the training grounds for the X-Men, starting to evolve on its own, continuing to evolve. Elsewhere, we have Polaris, who's sent on a solo X Factor mission to dismantle Stryker and his group, the Purifiers. She does so aggressively, which results in her firing from X Factor. We learn, within that exchange of her firing, that Senator Kelly has outlawed X-Men related activities in this new timeline as a way to also, as a reaction, I suppose, to, this new decree. Xavier appoints Storm as the school's new headmistress. Meanwhile, in the Polaris storyline that we have, after being, quote unquote, fired from X Factor, she returns to her original team, returns to the X-Men, and it's within this moment that we also are provided some insight into Polaris's legacy or parentage. For many of us that are X-Men fans, we know that she is the daughter of Eric Lancher, aka Magneto. But they also provide that opportunity for those who may not be, well versed in that or aware of that, to share that that information or that background on her character. And while she's there, we have I guess you can say, a episode in which she is babysitting of doing babysitting of sorts of the younger students at the X mansion, while some of the other X-Men are elsewhere visiting the Genosha wreckage. So back at the X mansion, we have Polaris, Storm, Morph, Bishop, and Forge who stay behind to look after the school. And it's during this time that she is, quote unquote, joining the small collection of X-Men, veteran X-Men that are staying behind as babysitters, that the danger room goes on the offensive, separating, the team that's currently there at the X Mansion and attacking them. After successfully thwarting the team in its proximity in the danger room, it takes off in the X jet. This being, the now embodiment of the danger room that has taken, physical form, takes off on the X jet and makes haste to Genosha to take on the remaining X-Men. And it is in this, encounter that Polaris is providing an opportunity to, shed some of her baggage, so to speak, some of her trauma, And it's through some encouragement from Xavier that she is able to dig deep within her abilities to overwhelm uh, the physical embodiment of the Danger Room. Of course, with the X-Men, her team members' help, she's able to overwhelm Danger. And in the aftermath of this battle, uh, Xavier comes to the decision to create X Corp as a response to the growing number of threats that are continuing to arise across the world. As all of this is happening, we have I guess you can say, a cliffhanger of sorts as Apocalypse is back at his stronghold. We see in Athens, and it is in this moment that we are provided confirmation that Gambit is in fact alive, thanks to the awesome resurrection related abilities that Apocalypse has and the technology that he has. He has in fact brought Gambit back. And that brings us to our episode. So with that, I want to bring our guests on. They've been on the show before, fellow journalists, and has writes for a number of various outlets, I should say. So I always like to reference my friend here as a Merc journalist, across various outlets. But it's my pleasure to bring onto the show Drew Brees. Let me bring him on. Drew, what's going on, man? Hey, hold on. I think you're muted, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. Hey, good to talk with you. Good to be here. Still
Yes,
drying off from being outside, but what can I tell you? Yeah, it was a heck of an episode. A
it
lot of stuff
was.
going on. So
Yes, yes. So, I mean, just your initial impressions of episode 6. What are your initial thoughts before we dive into some of the analysis and that type of thing?
I think the overarching theme for me was for both Professor X and Polaris. How do you move forward when
Yes,
you don't have the person you need to be with, you need to talk with? How do you go forward from there? And you mentioned that Professor X is spending a lot of time in the Danger Room, rerunning that sequence of events that led to Magneto's death. And for me, it's like yeah, he starts off trying to think of like what could I do differently, what could I have done, what strategies can I come up with, but it's pretty clear very quickly that he's just torturing himself. He's
yes,
he's stuck in that moment. He's full of guilt and recriminations and feeling inadequate, and that he let his friend die, and so he's stuck. And in her own way, Polaris is just as stuck. She's being compared in the press to being the new Magneto. Um, she has to feel like what do I do to prove to the world that I'm not my father? And she can't resolve that on her own. She has to, be in that moment. She has to have that moment of clarity where she realizes that, yeah, she in some ways she is like her father. And, what does that mean going forward?
for sure, for sure. And I guess the thing that is also fascinating too, commenting further on what you're saying is we've seen it. I feel like in this episode a lot where are we truly destined to go down a certain path where are we kind of hard set to go down certain things? Is it already set? Is it something that we can change? Is there an opportunity to be able to change? And we saw that in prior episodes with uh potentially with Apocalypse. What if he was, snatched up prior to being taken in by the bandits that you had there that eventually gave him his motto that he lives by of survival with the fittest. Maybe if he had never learned to live by that, maybe he could have potentially been quote unquote the first X-Man. Or
Yeah.
even in the same breath, I was gonna say, even with the same breath of Nathan, of Cable, um, was he always set to go down that path to be, even though he is a hero, the means in which he goes about achieving his ends is not always the most honorable. And maybe because of that upbringing, that kind of determined those said choices. But if he maybe was raised in the present, would he have turned out the same way? So there's always
Sure.
these questions of that.
I,
So
I think
go
I
ahead.
think there's a lot to that. I think that the overarching theme of the whole season so far has been what is fate?
Yeah.
Are we tied to our destiny? And the X-Men in the past, I think you look back on it and say, yeah, they accelerated Apocalypse becoming what he was going to be. They didn't prevent it. They accelerated it. They pushed him toward it because partly out of their own fears, partly out of just not trusting the kid enough to level with him. They didn't trust him to say, look, if you get on a certain road, you will be feared and hated, and yes, you'll live for a long, long time, but you'll wreak so much damage and devastation and death along the way.
Yeah.
Whereas if you embrace a better path, you can inspire, you can uplift, you can raise the bar for all of humanity and mutant kind together. But they didn't. But that's the thing. Is like that's not the world that Magneto lives in. That's not the world that he believes in. He doesn't believe in a world where you can inspire someone toward greatness. He believes you have to manipulate and coerce and steer them, and that's the wrong approach. And I think that in this case, it's like we're seeing that playing out in this episode. We're seeing where that approach failed, and now Charles is like, what else can we do now that the die's been cast? Where do we go from here? And Polaris is in the same boat. Like she's going to be the daughter of Magneto, whatever she does. So where does she go from here? And
Yeah.
and Cable is the same. It's like Cable was thrown into the future, and is he going to be the mutant anti-hero? Is he going to be the mutant Punisher? You know,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where he's at.
For sure. For sure. And I mean, let me raise this question to you. I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. Is when we're talking about the character of Polaris, do you feel that, or I should say, not necessarily Polaris, but with Xavier, that on some level, despite his nature of trying to quote unquote find the better way, or find the more honorable way, that he still has come to rely on Magneto to be the person who makes the tougher decisions. And now that he's not around to be that person that can make the tough decisions for him, that puts him in a weird spot, because
I
he's in on a weird level. He's come to rely upon Magneto to be that person, to be that bad guy, even though he may not necessarily agree with it. He still is okay with it because he himself doesn't have the stomach to do some of the things that Magneto is willing to do.
I think that's a great point. Magneto had become Xavier's secret weapon, I think.
Yes.
So, and that's a bad place for
Yes.
Charles to be, because it's dishonest and it's manipulative. And in the comic books for a long time now, they've sort of reverted to the idea that Charles Xavier is not the noble figure we've all thought he was. And I don't know that I necessarily like that. I have some ideas for how I would address that if I were writing X-Men.
Uh-huh.
I think that he's picked up an awful lot of bad thoughts along the way that have sort of been assimilated inside his own personality. So I think he's picked up an awful lot of bad stuff, and he needs to sort of detox a little bit. But
Yeah.
but that said, it's like it goes back to, yeah, Professor X in some ways, in this show especially, has been looking for the easy way out. he hasn't seemed to really want to do the work. He's been letting Magneto take the lead, even when Magneto is almost objectively and almost inarguably not doing the right thing. He is lying to this kid. He is manipulating him, and it is going to blow up. And that's the thing that gets me about fiction generally, is when people have this big song and dance, say, I was trying to protect you. It's like, no, you weren't. You were never trying to protect that person. You were trying to do the easy thing. You're trying to protect yourself. It's like Steve Rogers with Tony Stark in Avengers Civil War, or Captain America Civil War, where he says, I was trying to protect you. He's like, he wasn't trying to protect him. He was trying to protect
You were trying
Bucky.
to protect your friend. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
he was protecting Bucky. And
Yeah.
if he'd just come to Tony and said, look, yes, my friend killed your parents when he was a brainwashed tool of Hydra, I think that Tony would have been angry, but he could have gotten past it. But no, Steve didn't want to do that. He wanted to have his cake and eat it too. And
Mm-hmm.
so he lied to Tony to protect his better friend, and that exploded. So,
For sure. For sure. For sure.
and I think it's the same thing here. I think that Magneto lies to Ensaba Nur, and Baal kind of sees it, and Baal pays for it. He gets killed in this fight, and and then Kang just slips away, and it's like, okay, well that's done. He's out of the picture now. I know when I'm beat, but yeah, I mean it's a weird situation, and I do think that Professor X often takes the easy way out. He often falls back on, well, I'll just change their minds or erase their memories or smooth things over so that I'm not the bad guy.
Right.
And
Right.
and I think that that's a problem, and I think that's something that needs to be called out. And frankly, we have not seen Professor X held accountable for this, except in bits and pieces, and never for very long, never in a meaningful way. You know,
Yeah.
so
Definitely. Definitely.
so will we now?
So
You know,
yeah, I know. I know. I know. It places us in a very interesting place to say the least. And then I would say even on Polaris's end, um, it's an interesting dynamic that you have there because it's almost like the the standard the kind of the trope that you see of the child that not necessarily was I not necessarily abandoned. I don't want to say abandoned, but uh, has that estranged parent. And when you have that estranged parent where you're so used to being at odds with them that when they are finally no longer around, that it also become develops a weird dynamic too, because now you always, I feel like on some level she has a what if scenario of, okay, what if I was able to reconcile things with him and learn more about him
yeah,
versus you know just being upset with him and angry with him the
yeah,
entire time, because now
yeah.
I'll
You don't.
never really be able to. Yeah.
She doesn't have closure.
Yeah, for
She doesn't have
sure.
closure. And riffing off something you said before that just struck me while we were going back and forth. Xavier is setting up Polaris to be his new Magneto.
Indeed, because I was gonna say on some level he needs that type of relationship, that dynamic. So he's on a
Yeah,
weird level being manipulative again
yeah.
of creating, like you said, a brand new Magneto that
He's,
he
he's
needs. He
circling
needs
he's
that.
circling right back around and telling her, you need to dig deep and be who you are, which is my weapon.
Right. For this moment, when it's
Yeah,
convenient for this moment.
yeah. So it's like he's really pulling a really despicable stunt on her, and messing with her head, not with his powers, but just steering her toward, like, you know, yeah, you don't have to be Magneto, but you really ought to rip this robot apart, and just show the world what you're capable of. It's like, okay. So, you know,
But what I was gonna say, and keeping that in mind, and keeping in what we have going is, I'm sure it's in the back of your mind of the episodes that we've gotten thus far of what villain is on the horizon. Um, I mean, yes, we have Apocalypse, and that's great, and we have Gambit, and that's great too. But based off of what we've been discussing thus far, it feels like they are planting the seeds of something else coming, which I feel like you already know where I'm getting at,
yeah,
because we already have had cameos of other characters thus far, so they can logically do a decent adaptation of this arc that we have with Onslaught. So
yep,
I'm curious to know your thoughts with that, because they did plant a couple of things in there. They did have what was it? Um, I don't know if you caught it, but they had Mr. Fantastic in the back playing with the
yep,
kids in at the
yeah.
X
Morph
Mansion.
was Mr. Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had. I don't know if you caught the Watcher. The Watcher was there in Athens watching
Mm,
Apocalypse.
yep.
It's a blink and you miss it, but he's there in the sky in the background watching Apocalypse like resurrect Gambit. But we've had
Yeah.
other characters in the broader Marvel universe that have popped up that are a part of the Onslaught arc. So it feels like they are planning all of these things in here, because it, that way it doesn't feel out of context or out of the ordinary should they decide to go that route.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they're going to get that fusion of Professor X and Magneto now that Magneto's gone. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely see Onslaught appearing. I can also see Kang showing up again. I don't think that his role in this is finished yet. He was sort of kicked out of Egypt back in a couple thousand years ago, but it seems like he's sort of like, well, I'll just move on to the next thing, and maybe the next thing will involve fighting Apocalypse in '97 or in the future or whatever. But yeah, so I think there's some ways they can definitely take this. I think Onslaught is a very real possibility. I think we will see the Onslaught saga at some point. I don't think it'll end with the Heroes Reborn ending, but I do think there's definitely room for them to go there in this story. I thought it was interesting too that apparently they said this week that they would like 10 seasons of X-Men '97, and I'm like, that's a lot. That's a pretty big swing for the TV division. So you know they've been reluctant to guarantee anything, even a second season. And we know that X-Men's getting seasons 3 and 4 that are working on right now. They've already done the voice work for 3, and they're scripting season 4, so they're getting there. But it's just kind of like, man, they want 10 seasons of a show, and they haven't even really given a solid commitment to Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and this other stuff. So it's like, okay, man, it's like whatever. So
No, I hear you though, but I mean, to your point, as you said, they're not going to be able to do a one for one adaptation of if they decide to go the Onslaught route. But I did have some thoughts on it. Let me know what you think of how they can still bring it about without doing a one for one. So we keep getting a recap of this moment that is traumatizing Professor X. What if, because we see it a lot when it comes to our psychic characters, that in doing so, it created a connection in that moment where some of the consciousness of Magneto, because they were communicating with each other, did make its way into Xavier's mind, and it's compartmentalized somewhere in his mind for him to somehow unlock and still become Onslaught. So it's
oh
locked
yeah,
away somewhere, but it happened in that interaction of them, communicating with each other in his final moments.
sure.
Um, I mean, that's one possibility. You have another possibility where they made a big point of showing Magneto's helmet. So maybe on some weird level, the psychic energy of Magneto in his final moments is still trapped within that helmet.
Yeah.
That still managed to make it out after he was taken out or killed by Apocalypse. So I mean, I feel like you have those elements where you can still kind of do an adaptation and still have that idea that Magneto is still around without having to do a one for one.
I'd be interested in seeing if they want to start playing with like Krakoan resurrection protocols yet. You know, if Xavier decides that, oh, let's bring him back, you know, and
Do you think
that,
that's too early though,
I think it's
considering what
early
they've
for
done?
this, but I also think that it's one of those things that if they really want to get Magneto back, they might just go ahead and say, you know, let's just go for it here and now. Let's just do it now, and it'll be a part of Krakoa later. But it's like maybe as a pilot test, let's bring Magneto back, or they might clone him. There's been clones of Magneto before. They had Joseph, and they thought Zorn was a clone of Magneto, and all these other things. So there's things that they might wind up doing, but I think that you've got a couple of really good ideas there. I think there's a couple of other things they could do instead if they want to go a different route. But yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty of room to bring Onslaught in, and I think at some point they're going to have to, if only to hold up a mirror to Xavier and show him this is the path you've been on. This is what you've been doing. This is the sum total of, you know, your manipulations and your interference with people and everything else. So, you know, I think there's I think there's room to do these things. And heck, with 10 seasons to play with, there's a lot of space to do an awful lot of X-Men stories. It doesn't have to be all
Yeah,
Dark Phoenix.
definitely. No,
So
absolutely right. Absolutely right. So, um, I I am curious to see how that will play out. If they are doing 10 seasons, I do like the Krakoa idea. I would just say I'm considering all the things that come into play with Krakoa and all the different elements of how that society works and everything. Even though they have done a decent job of moving through certain arcs, like I've been kind of surprised how they've been able to move through certain arcs kind of seamlessly. That if it was done 30 years ago, I feel like they would have dedicated an entire season for it.
yeah,
The whole thing with the Goblin Queen. I feel like that could have easily been an entire season, but they managed to get through that in a couple of episodes.
yeah,
Um, you know, to their credit of what they did with Apocalypse, they managed to juggle three different points of being, three different wins, if you will, past, present, and future, and then also managed to do three different teams within the past, present, and future.
yeah.
So to their credit, they have figured out a way somehow to seamlessly. I feel like breeze through is too strong of a word, but they figured out a way to chop out a lot of fat and to get into a lot of things that are interesting within a lot of those arcs. Um, Even though I will say I wouldn't have mind if they spent more time with that Goblin Queen arc, um, and a few other arcs that they have managed to get through. Even with Bastion, like I feel like they could have gotten through that, could have spent a little more time on that as well. But I mean, what we got still I felt was paced decently. So I don't know. It will
They're
be interesting
definitely
to see.
racing through some stories. So yeah, they're
Yeah,
definitely speeding
yeah,
through. Like, you know, the Weapon X thing could have been 2 episodes. You know,
yeah, yeah,
it could have
yeah.
been.
Um,
And especially kind of coming in the middle of this Apocalypse arc, it's sort of like it's kind of an odd story to dump in right there, But okay, they wanted to resolve him getting his adamantium back, so they just went ahead and did it. So okay, you know,
Yeah, I was gonna say because that was a weird after the cliffhanger that you have in episode 4. I feel like this should have been episode 5,
yeah,
and the side quest quote unquote Wolverine episode should have been 6. Um, because when you leave off on a cliffhanger like that, the expectation is that you're still by the next episode dealing with the ramifications of that, and I feel like you're getting that in this episode, but you're getting it. You still have an episode between it that causes you to I feel like to lose the impact of what happened the
yeah.
episode before.
And that post
Um,
credit scene in the post credit scene in 4 did not need to be there. It could have been in 5.
yeah,
Yeah.
easily.
I mean,
So
I
let
know they
me
wanted to
ask
bring
this.
I know they wanted to bring my Gambit back, but still.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let me ask you this, Drew. I know that you weren't with us last week, but you are caught up on where we are. How did you feel? And I know we're not really, mostly talking episode 6, but since we're doing a tangent really quick on 5,
Yeah.
how do you feel about what they did characterization wise with Team X? Do you feel like personally, I feel like there needed to be another episode to understand how they got to that point versus just kind of shoehorning or throwing them in there? But maybe you felt differently of them just at the top of the episode just being together.
No, I think the viewers were shortchanged. I don't think we got enough to understand how Wolverine felt about any of these characters, except maybe Morph and Sabretooth. I don't think we
I
understood
would
his
argue even
relationship.
Sabretooth. Because I mean, if we're continuing the continuity of the the original show, with most of the characters, because they had another episode like this of them being Team X. They, even though they worked together briefly in that episode and they were kind of forced to work together, when the
Hmm?
episode was said and done, they were still not on good terms. Like everyone like still kind of left on like not very great terms. So to have them believably come back and agree to come back to work together, it just, I don't know, it just felt like it was out of place.
It's kind of ridiculous, and you really ideally you would have had more setup. You would have had a longer introduction in that episode and said, okay, this is who these people are. This is where we left off. This is what Wolverine needs to do to get them back. And then the next episode would have been we launched them at this mission, and the whole point is at the end it was just about Wolverine getting his adamantium back. That was the only reason he
Okay,
put them
Drew,
through
give
this.
me 1 second. I think you're getting a little choppy again.
Okay,
Apologies. I just wanted to make sure you're able to hear you. Okay, you
okay,
you coming in slightly choppy, so I apologize. Go ahead. What were you saying?
that's fine. Um, I think that you needed that one episode lead in because the whole point of the episode was Wolverine uses them. He's used his friends to get his
Right.
adamantium back, including Morph. And I think the fallout from that episode is going to have to be that Morph doesn't trust him anymore. You know? Did you get that?
Yeah. I mean, I got the gist of what you were sharing. Yeah.
So I think that's an issue, and I think that's something they have to explore. Is that he basically used his friends, like his friend Morph, used these other people, and Weapon X is done. I mean, Team X is done too. I think they're finished. I don't see any way forward for them because two of them died. The rest of them were basically sold out so that Wolverine could get his adamantium back. It's like, what are you going to do? And yeah, they killed a lot of Brood and they stopped an alien invasion, but that's not something that any of those people signed up for. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Like as I said, I mean, I was sharing this last week. I'm a horror guy. I love the Brood. I think the Brood are awesome. But in terms of where it fit within the larger context of the way that they did these episodes, the first three worked great because they seamlessly fit together. As I said, when you're dealing with the different timelines and how they connect together, as parallels of what's happening in these three different points of time. And then four, just continuing on that same track of where we picked up or where we left off at in the past. But yeah, like
Yeah.
episode five, I feel like it's kind of like a misnomer where it should have been placed elsewhere. It really felt out of place, and it's a bummer because in under any other circumstances, I feel like it would have fit perfectly later on after we had already addressed the ramifications of Magneto's death at the end of four.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
yeah,
think skipping a
for
week
sure. So
to do I think skipping a week to do that side quest definitely kills the momentum on Magneto's memorial, you know, and having the impact of that, the emotional impact of that still fresh. And yeah, I mean, unless there's some really super compelling reason why Wolverine needs his adamantium back right now for story purposes, you shove that story later in the season. You know, it's just not that important.
and on top of that, there's a way cooler arc that he has of having the mutation and having an understanding that without the adamantium, he actually, in fact, is more powerful than he would be with the adamantium, and how similarly he would continue that mutation would continue to make him appear more feral. Like that would have been an interesting arc to
Yeah,
dive into.
yeah.
We oftentimes talk about Wolverine kind of battling with himself. I feel like that would have been a nice episode. I mean, if you eventually gave him the adamantium back, then fine, whatever. But I still feel like I don't know if it's because they don't want to. I hate to say ugly up Wolverine or something. Like they want him to be the Wolverine that people recognize, and not to be so far removed or gone from that. They felt that it would be alienating those who are casual X-Men fans and are and don't want to alienate those folks. But I say dive into it and to really embrace it. So
I
I
think
feel
that
like there was an opportunity to do that.
I agree. I think it's a missed opportunity not to explore some of these things because if you pander to casual fans, then they're going to get bored anyway. You know, they're going to be like, oh, well, this is just the same guy, whatever, and they'll walk. If they see something that's different, they'll be like, wait a minute, what happened to this guy? And they might want to know more.
Right.
They might be interested in sticking around. They might
And
say,
read
oh, you know,
comics. How about that?
yeah.
And read
They might be
comics
like,
and learn more
yeah,
about it.
exactly. And they might be like, you know, how did he lose his? He lost adamantium because Magneto tore it out of him. What happens now? Well, he's got bone claws. Well, what can you do with bone claws? Not as much as with adamantium claws. So that's going to be a tougher thing for him to deal with. He's not. He may not be as good a fighter now, but and it's like, yeah, I mean, you're definitely you're throwing something that could be interesting out the door because you think fans won't be on board with it. And honestly, I think if you challenge the fans, challenge the viewers, they're going to be more interested, more engaged. You know, people want a reason to stay and they want to see things they haven't seen before. And if you give them that, they'll be with you. They'll stay with you. But if you give them the same old stuff and say, "Oh, well, you know, we're back to the same Wolverine you saw last season," it's like, okay, fine, you know, okay, great, but yeah, I think definitely you need to be in that spot of don't give the viewers what they think they want because what they think they want is comfort food, and that's not your job as an entertainer. You know, you should be there to constantly provoke and constantly say, okay, this guy's doing this now, you know, and stick with it. Trust your instincts.
And I was gonna say it's a different medium too. I mean, I know people so frequently get caught up in oh, this isn't like the, the source material, but it's a different medium. It's, for one, the medium is different, so the way that you're approaching the medium is not going to be the same as the source material that it comes from. And then two, just as you're mentioning, like it does a disservice not only to casual fans but also to hardcore fans too, because if you're familiar with it, you already know it. So like it's boring if it is a one for one. It makes things more interesting
Well,
when there's some slight changes or variations there.
yeah, and the thing is that fans can also mislead you. Like years ago, my favorite one favorite example is this is they asked the audience in Hall H at Comic Con, "What do you think of the movie called Snakes on a Plane?" And they were all excited about it. They're like, "Yeah!" And the fans will go berserk over stuff, and then it gets out in the real world, and people are like, okay, yeah, fine, whatever. You can't judge based on what the fans get excited about, because the fans will steer you wrong, frankly. The wild fandom is not connected to what the mainstream is about, and you need mainstream success to keep these things afloat. So my personal take is that, yeah, don't don't just go out of your way to tick off fans or make them angry, but at the same time, you don't have to be bound by what they're looking for or what they want or what they tell you they want, because in the last analysis, either they will continue to watch or they won't. You can't control that. Your job is to tell a good story, and you tell a good story by putting your characters through the ringer month after month after month. And if your character is Wolverine, who just jumps into fights, slaughters everybody, comes out, I'm the best there is at what I do, kind of guy, that's boring. It's boring. It's like the guy that always wins, never gets a scratch, just shrugs it off. It's like there's nothing cool about that. There's nothing interesting about that. And for me, that's a lot of where a lot of these characters have been over the last few years. They win too easy. The stakes are not personal to them. And and there's probably comic book stories where I'm wrong, where they do have personal stakes, where the characters don't win clean, easy victories. But the impression you get of these characters is that's exactly what's going on with them. You know, so I will admit to being a little bit bored of Wolverine. Honestly, I think I think there are other characters in Marvel. I think there are good characters in Marvel, and they don't need to rely on this one guy to shoulder the burden of being the cool mutant. So, okay, that's it. I've gone out on a limb.
Indeed, indeed.
Saw it off behind me. So,
No, no, you're good. No, no, you're good. You're good. No, I agree. And here's the crazy thing, like, you know, even if you're doing something in a different medium and you're not doing, as I said, a one for one, we've seen it happen where we have characters that are created in one medium, and guess what? They're brought over to the original source material to be included in the original source material.
yeah.
It's not unheard of to have characters like that. So without, without being willing or open to adaptation, I know when we're talking about adaptation, the whole point of adaptation is that it's not 100% like the original. It is an adaptation, something that
Yeah.
is for the most part like that said thing, but there are going to be slight variations. That's the whole point of an adaptation. So
And
but yeah,
the funny thing is, there's adaptations that completely go off the rails, and they go and do their own
and then,
thing.
and they're
You know,
interesting,
yeah,
ways in which they
yeah,
go off on their own thing.
yeah. Like if you
So,
look at the boys
but
was completely, you know, the boys was miles away from where the comic book was ending up, but it was interesting. So
yes, 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 indeed, indeed. So, if we were to recap, this entire episode, Mr. Bittner. So, if we were to recap it, can you tell me if we're talking about the number of X's, five being perfect, four being good, three being average, going down the line, like where would you place it?
this episode number 6, I'd give like four X's because it gets into some really deep questions of legacy, of destiny, of identity, and also, like I said, that wrinkle we identified earlier of Xavier falling back into the same patterns, and he's falling back into his comfort zone of having a weapon, a secret weapon that he can unleash and still be the good guy, still be the quote unquote voice of reason. So yeah, I mean, I think this episode says some really good stuff. I wish it had been episode number 5. I think it would have been stronger as 5. Um, but but yeah, I mean, it's getting there. So yeah, really liked it.
All right, cool, awesome, awesome. I would have to agree. I had going on that tangent of talking about episode 5 and the episode 5 that we got. I had that as what was it, 3 stars out of 5, just because I'm just a big horror guy. Like that was enough to slightly take me over the edge of it being a little slightly better than average. But again, in terms of characterization of what transpired, I just felt like it was out of place. And I agree with you that episode 6 would have made more sense as our pseudo episode of 5. Um, I would say, in thinking of this episode, um, and I realized we didn't even talk about, enough of this, is just that physical embodiment of danger, which is something that does transpire um,
Yeah,
in the source material, and what they were able to do with that. Um, I would have liked for it to be something that they built towards. Actually, I do like that we had the character in there. I just feel like it would have had more impact if they steadily built it over a couple of an episode arc versus it all just coming to pass in one episode.
yeah,
Even if the whole season wasn't dedicated to it, they could have had it as a subplot that was steadily building over a couple of episodes and maybe transpired like a third of the way into the season, or maybe 2/3 of a way to the season. That would be my only gripe,
hmm
is providing
I think that's a
an opportunity
really
for
good
that to
point.
breathe.
Yeah, really good
But
point.
otherwise, like in terms of them actually having it in and of itself, I feel like they did a decent job of it. Um, and I do love that they're showing, one thing that I have enjoyed with X-Men 97 is that they've been showing love to characters that I feel like haven't gotten enough love. We did have moments like with Jubilee previously thus far in the
Hmm.
season where I feel like Jubilee a lot of times gets the short end of the stick, and they gave her, moments to be awesome. Um, Same thing with Polaris. Well, when we've had Polaris, there are moments where previously in iterations that we've seen in the original show, and even in some of the other animated shows that we've had since then, like I want to say it was like Wolverine and the X-Men, I believe she popped up in. Um, she, I feel like she's always being utilized as a secondhand Magneto. Like, oh, Magneto's not around, so we're going to use Polaris. But I feel like they actually gave her some agency and things to do that made sense, and kind of gave her an arc. Even in the
Yeah,
original show, I didn't like that she was kind of like a, even though she is a capable character in terms of the abilities that she has, she was really more of a plot device in the original show as a part of a love triangle with Iceman, which I was like, but she's Polaris. All the things that she's capable of doing, why are we limiting her to just being a love interest within this love triangle that is like the basis between
yeah,
Havoc and Iceman? She's a lot more than just being a love interest between, these two characters. Uh, and that was another thing too, which brings it down to a four for me, is that I know that we're talking about 30 years worth of a break between the original show and this show, while there have been good efforts in continuing the arcs that we've had from the original series to this series, there have been other occasions where it felt like, okay, did you guys forget that this transpired? Where something happened in the original show and it should have carried over to this show. I felt
That's one
like
thing.
that
That's
moment.
one thing they haven't. That's one thing they haven't really done. Is they haven't really done previously on X-Men '97 that's showing the old show. You know, so you don't get that deep background. You get the if you were watching last season, you're cool, but we don't care if you watch the old show or not. Kind of.
Yeah. And I mean, I get that to a degree because maybe, you have new audience members that are coming in fresh for this, but at the same time, like I feel like it wouldn't hurt to if you had a previously on X-Men that you actually, utilize some of the footage from the original show to carry you over to what's happening on this show, because if we're going to go by the continuity of the original show, we need to go by the continuity of the original show. And the only reason why I say that is we just as I said, we had that relationship between Havoc and Polaris, and it was a big like arc where it was something that caused her to remain with X Factor. Then it caused her to not go back to the X-Men and to kind of have the interaction that we did between them. When she, was let go of X Factor, it seemed kind of like really, what's the word that I want to use? It didn't seem like a realistic reaction that exes would have, even if they are exes or if they're still in a relationship, that they would have towards one another if a member of their team was fired from that team.
Yeah.
Even if we had like a cutaway saying like, oh, they're no longer together, or like they broke up such and such, even if that were the case, I feel like the interaction that they had was not realistic. When they were in the locker room, that relationship seemed kind of cold, and it doesn't seem like a relationship or interaction that folks would have if they were involved with each other, even if they were exes.
Yeah.
Even if we're
And
establishing that they're exes, I feel like it would have played out differently.
it's funny. It's like, looking at these things in retrospect, you can see, yeah, it would be better if they had like a line of dialogue that connects these two, or that covers
Yeah.
these things. And it's interesting to me too that this is, X-Men '97 season 1 and season 2. It's not the next season of the original show. So I think there's definitely an attitude that this is a new show and we're moving forward as if it is a new show. And yeah, the old show happened, but if you didn't watch it, yeah, it's cool. So
Well, but I would argue this, and I agree with you. If you want, if you're afraid that someone is not up to speed on what happened, then include the
yeah,
footage from the original show in
right,
your
exactly.
previously on
Show it.
X-Men, because
Yeah,
it will force people to go back and say, oh, okay, this was from 30 years ago. You have
yeah,
the original show on Disney Plus. It's not like you don't have it on there that people can watch. They can go back and watch it. And guess what? We have this cool thing called technology where you watch an episode, it'll say if you watch this episode, guess what? You may want to watch this episode or watch this, and this. You can set it up in terms of your algorithm to have it come up
yeah.
as something to watch if
You
you
can
watch this episode. It
you can
happens
even
with
go
anything, any
you
content
can
that you watch.
yeah, you can even go really crazy and have pop-up boxes on your screen and say, for more, watch episode, X,
Yeah. And
and
it'll cut
and do
immediately to
that.
that episode that you can watch. You don't even need to
Yeah,
watch the whole season.
yeah. And
So
and
I don't
even putting
know. I don't know. Disney, if you're watching, I don't know.
yeah, well, it's
There's a
it's a
way
it
to
was a
do that, have your cake and eat it too.
yeah, but it was a good episode. I think it's been a good season so far. I think 5 was a stumble. Um and it was interesting how low rated it was. It was a low rated episode compared to a lot of the others this season. But I think we're going to get some more apocalypse action. We're going to see Xavier coming to terms with being a failure, failing to save Magneto. And we'll see. We'll see where we go from here. But I know that I'll be watching, and I will certainly be around to talk more about this show, like as it goes on. So
Indeed. Sorry, I kicked out there for a moment, but
no, it's okay.
yes, indeed. So with that, Drew, can you tell folks where they can find you, sir?
Sure. These days, check out Riotous, my friend Shireen's website. That's RIOUT-US.com. I've got recaps of the X-Men episodes. I'm doing recaps of Stuart Fails to Save the Universe. I'll probably have a few other things on there. I'm going to go see Spider-Man on Monday night, so I'll probably have a review of that up in a couple days. And yeah, so a lot of stuff out there. But I'm always glad to be here, Brandon. Always glad to be talking to you, my friend. And thanks for everything.
Absolutely, man. So I want to thank Drew Britt, partner, to come on and talk about X97 on this unofficial podcast for the show that we do weekly. You can find me at Brandon Troy ENT on X, and then Brandon Troy underscore ENT on Instagram. With that, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, of course, and see you guys soon. Later.
All right.